Hi, I'm Matt Jones. Arkansas is the SEC baseball champion for the first time in 17 years. This week on the WholeHog Baseball Podcast, we'll take a look back at the Florida series that clinched the title for the Razorbacks. We'll also look ahead to the SEC tournament this week in Hoover, beginning with Wednesday's game against Georgia. Clay Henry and Seth Campbell join me to talk about this week in Arkansas baseball. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Massage Envy has been voted the best day spa and best massage in all of Northwest Arkansas. Great therapists and estheticians go along with a new service that I am truly excited about. Rapid Tension Relief uses a special tool that will melt the tension and soreness away. Trust me, you will not be disappointed in the results. I highly recommend this feature along with a total body stretch assisted stretch program. Whether you are competing at a high level or just want to relax, these services are for everyone. Massage, rapid tension relief, total body stretch, deep muscle treatment massage, you choose. Or you can try any combination of those. So the next time you're feeling tight, make sure to call my friends at Massage Envy.
This is the WholeHog Baseball Podcast, presented by Massage Envy, the only podcast devoted entirely to Arkansas baseball. Now, here's Matt Jones and Seth Campbell.
There were a lot of scenarios going into last week for Arkansas to win the SEC title, teams that could lose, what Arkansas had to do, but the easiest one for the Razorbacks was if they swept Florida, and that's what happened. I think it was one of the most impressive series that Arkansas has played all year. I think people forget sometimes that Florida was ranked number one in the preseason, and if you just were to take a look at the rosters throughout college baseball, Florida's roster is as impressive as anyone's in the country. And so for Arkansas to win those three games the way they did by scores of 6-1, 4-3, 9-3 in the finale, probably the most impressive series that Arkansas has played this year. And that's coming on the heels, Seth and Clay, of what we thought was probably their best series that they had played the week before against Tennessee, given the competition. And so you've got to like how the Razorbacks are playing as they go into the postseason. They finished the regular season 42-10 and with a 22-8 record in the SEC. The 42-10 record, I don't know of the last time that they've been that good in the regular season, and it could have been better. You think about the games that they had canceled against Grambling State, Missouri State. Those were probably wins in the midweek. They had a midweek series wiped out against Nebraska because the Big Ten wasn't allowing teams to play outside of their region. This is just one of the most impressive regular seasons I can remember at Arkansas. And then to go 22-8 in SEC play, that tied Norm DeBryan's 99 team for the best SEC record the program's ever had.
Yeah, I'm just impressed. It seems like they got better every week. And you just think back at the start of the season, we had the polar vortex, whatever you want to call it, that kept them inside. And, teams at Auburn and Florida and Georgia, they were outside during that period because it was not nearly as cold. So they got about a 3-week late start on everybody else as far as being able to practice outside, and it didn't bother them. They went to Arlington and rolled. Didn't matter, go on the road at Louisiana Tech, go on the road at Starkville, and it just seemed like they didn't really care who they were playing, where they were playing, who was umpiring, whatever. They just played.
I think the thing that's most impressive to me is if you look at that list of the NCAA's potential regional hosts, there's 19 teams on there other than Arkansas. And out of those 19 teams, they played 9 of them. And they have a 17-4 record against those 9 teams. It's incredible. I mean, you're talking about the other 19 best teams in the country, probably, at least in the NCAA selection committee's eyes, and they have a 17-4 record against those teams, and they only played Florida at home. Everybody else they played on the road.
When the selection committee gets together, and I'm sure they're already doing that, they won't be talking about the number 1 seed. There'll be no discussion. They'll move on to the next. Yeah. They'll move on to whether Texas deserves to be number 2 or whoever else you want to, or Vanderbilt. But it won't be about Arkansas.
Arkansas could never leave the dugout in Hoover this weekend, and they would still be the number 1 seed.
Yeah, they move up. They may just go ahead and give them the trophy. I'm joking.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, guys, when you think about just what has gone on this entire season and how Arkansas did jump out from the chute. I think, Clay, you made a really good point about, there was just frigid weather in February here in Arkansas and especially in Northwest. And the Razorbacks didn't get to go out on the field, but that's where that Fowler Indoor Center comes in. And it's not just a tool in recruiting to wow recruits' eyes, but it actually comes in handy when it decides to drop to -20 in Northwest Arkansas. And you can utilize those things, and you can come out sharp in an Arlington tournament that has really turned out to be 3 of the top teams of the Big 12 that you competed against in the beginning of the season and swept them.
Yeah, they turned the polar vortex into the Razorback vortex.
Well, I just thought, in retrospect, I think that tournament or event, whatever you want to call it, in Arlington was the best thing that could happen for them, because it kind of set the tone for the type of schedule they were going to face. I mean, they may have lost at Louisiana Tech had they not played that type of competition early in the season, because Louisiana Tech's a really good team this year. And they'd been on the road, and in most years they don't go on the road but once during the non-conference portion of the schedule. But then also, like you guys said, if they were playing a game in Fayetteville that first weekend, they wouldn't have been able to play. And so that was kind of a blessing in disguise for them, being able to play down in Arlington, because they were able to close the roof, play in 72-degree temperatures, and it was perfect conditions, for them to play.
Yeah, I've seen other seasons when they played well in one of those Texas showcase events, and it kind of gave them the big head. And it also does another thing. It gets your ranking way up high, and it puts a bullseye. And you saw all in the early part of the schedule, teams really play well early in series and give Arkansas a nice little push, and Arkansas responded with some rallies, and they just never turned back, and they kept getting better. They stayed healthy, Matt, Seth. That is a key to what they've been able to do.
Yeah, they went to Houston in 2016 and swept the Shriners Classic at Minute Maid. Of course, then you know how that season
that didn't turn out so well.
Right. Going back to the Florida series, I thought it was really fitting on Friday night when they won the title that they had to come back to win it. I mean, because that's the story of this team this year. It was the, I think, 13th time this year that they've come back from a 3-run deficit. And, you're sitting in the ballpark. Seth, you were there sitting with me on Friday night, and it just kind of felt like it was going to happen. You know what I mean? It's like they kind of come at you in waves, and okay, they might get a runner on or 2 runners on in the 5th or the 6th inning, and it doesn't come through. But, you just kind of feel like they're never out of it until the other team gets that 27th out. And to me, there was about a 10-minute real-time stretch, maybe 15, between when Robert Moore hit the 2-out home run in the bottom of the 8th to tie it. And then here's the sequence. Moore hits the home run. A few minutes later, Kevin Kopps comes in from the bullpen. Kopps gets the 3 consecutive outs. And then in the middle of the top of the 9th and the bottom of the 9th is the loudest I've ever heard the stadium. Even louder than whenever Charlie Welch had the hit that won it for him. It was an incredible atmosphere. And as you look ahead to the postseason now, they're going to have that atmosphere to play in front of. I don't see a team that can come in to bomb. Maybe I changed my mind when the selection show or when the selection committee makes its picks next week. I don't see a team that can come in to bomb and win in that atmosphere, especially whenever teams have been playing in empty ballparks for most of the year.
Yeah, I talked to someone that lives about 3 miles, maybe 3.5 miles from the stadium, and they were getting out of their car right as that was all going down, and they could hear the stadium. 3 miles away, they heard the roar. I mean, I've heard that kind of reaction from a football stadium, with 50 or 60,000, but not from a baseball stadium where you can hear the roar across town. And there was some magic going on out at Baum-Walker.
It's crazy to think about that there are guys on the team like Robert Moore who, we think has been there for 2 years, but he's never played in front of an atmosphere like that,
right,
because the season shut down after the Gonzaga game on March 11th. So you have all of these guys. Now you have basically 2 years of guys that haven't played in front of a crowd like that. And there was just a buzz. I don't know any other way to describe it, but there was a buzz in the atmosphere that people were just happy to be back in Baum-Walker Stadium, to have people beside each other, to be loud. And then I swear it was like a movie, Matt, when Kopps comes out, Arkansas ties the game after Robert Moore's home run. Kopps comes out and he's going to pitch, and he's walking out of the bullpen, and in succession, like people that are on down the left field line, like they stand up. And as Kops is walking, like as soon as he gets in front of the section, like that section stands up and just watches. And there's just like a slow rumble that just turns into a roar as he's about to go out on the mound. And I really think like this team deserves that.
You remember what Matt Hobbs said earlier this year? He said that when, I think it was the Auburn series, maybe the second game when Kops came in, it's a similar situation. They'd come back from a big deficit and they won that game. And he had thrown the night before and thrown really well. But then he came in and pitched game 2, I think threw like 12 pitches and got 3 outs. But remember what Matt Hobbs said after that? He said, I haven't felt that type of feeling in a stadium since Matt Cronin would come into the games in the 9th inning. And there's just, you have to be there. You have to experience it in person. But there's just this feeling when a great closer is coming into the game. And like you're right. There's a type of buzz or feeling within the stadium that you just can't quite describe.
Yeah, the closer role in baseball has to be the most fun thing that there is, because you're right. You know, that walk or the jog, and different pitchers do it different ways. And, you know, the great Yankee closer, Mariano Rivera, he had that. I went to a vacation years ago to San Diego, and it was the Cardinals against the Padres. And Padres were average, maybe poor, but they had a great closer in Trevor Hoffman. And we were in the stands, and they had a 1-run lead over the Cardinals. Of course, we were cheering for the Cardinals. And when they started playing his music, and I think it was Hell's Bells. What Trevor Hoffman?
Yeah, that's exactly what they played.
They started that, and of course we didn't know.
That place would go nuts when they would play that.
Yeah. I mean, and they only played it when they knew the door was going to open, and that park, old Jack Murphy Stadium, I think, it exploded. And my daughters are like, we didn't know the Padres cared anything about baseball. They cared about Trevor Hoffman. And it's the same thing when you have a great college closer, and that it doesn't always happen. There's not that many of them that are that reliable. Not even close to what Cronin. Now, old George Cole Field would be excited when Philip Stidham came in. And then you go back, Stidham pitched a little bit in the major leagues, not much. I think he pitched a little with Detroit, maybe Minnesota. But he was viewed that way when he was closing for the Razorbacks back in the Southwest Conference days. And he's set records that I don't think anybody's ever going to touch.
Yeah, he definitely one of their best closers.
Hell's Bells, I'd forgotten that.
Yeah, Hell's Bells, and then what was Rivera? Enter Sandman?
Oh,
is that right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Metallica. Yeah, baby. I've got that on my iPod.
Do you know what Kevin Kops comes into the game playing?
I know exactly what it is.
No, I have not. I have not been in the stadium this year. I'm hoping.
I'm not sure you would know it even if you were.
Oh, is it a Christian song?
No, it's not. Is it Glass Animals? Was that right, Seth?
It's called Heat Waves.
Yeah, Heat Waves.
Oh, I wouldn't know that.
Yeah, he used to come into
Bad
the
Boys.
Cops theme. Yeah, and then he changed it to something different this year.
Could you imagine him coming out to the Bad Boys? What you gonna do?
Well, they used to do that with him.
But you can't like, if that's his song, like you can't switch things up now. Especially,
I tweeted something the other night that said Kevin Kops is up in the bullpen. That's all I said, and someone replied. They said they ought to announce this over the public address system just for the pure intimidation factor for the opposing team. I thought maybe like they ought to do. He
How
gets
about
up
blue lights?
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Like he gets up in the bullpen and
They have a blue light in the bullpen.
They get up in the bullpen and maybe they just do a little sound effect like a boop boop. Like a little siren. It's like, okay, everybody look down there. There's Kevin. He's been incredible this year.
Yep.
Let's talk about him for a minute. He won SEC Pitcher of the Year, and Dave Van Horn won SEC Coach of the Year earlier this week. There was a lot of talk throughout the season about whether or not they would give it to Kops or if they would go with maybe the more popular decision, a guy like Kumar Rocker. For me, it's an easy decision. I mean, you look at his stats. He's first in the nation in ERA, 0.75 ERA. He's second in WHIP. I think he's something like 6th or 7th in strikeouts per 9 innings. His stats are incredible. And the thing that really jumps off the page to me is that he's thrown, 60 1/3 innings as a relief pitcher?
Yeah, that's
the fact that he can even qualify for the ERA lead as a relief pitcher is incredible. I can't remember a season like he's had. people in 18 talked about how great Blaine Knight was, and have we ever seen a season like this before? And I thought Isaiah Campbell in 19 was probably better as a starter than Knight was the year before. His record wasn't as good, but I don't think record is in a good reflection of how good a pitcher is. Every other statistical measure said that Isaiah Campbell was better in 19. In their roles, they were great, but I can't remember anybody in any role that's been any better than him this year.
Well, it's the winning edge, and it's, they would have won a lot of games. I've heard arguments that they would, be a 500 team without him, and that's not true because they put somebody else in that role, and he probably would have done well. But I don't think there's any way you can say that he could have done as well as Kopps, and it is the confidence that he brings to the team is really worth something. The fans feel it, but it's what he does to that dugout that is, it's like outer worldly. You want to play hard, and confidence in athletics is the wild card. When you have it in momentum, it's you can't hardly overcome it, and it's just like a wave that washes over you, and you're not gonna be able to hardly measure it. It's worth so much.
Yeah, I think the difference is exactly what you said, Matt. Is the fact that he's pitched so many innings that he qualifies for the ERA lead. If Kevin Kopps was a normal closer, and he had the season that he's having this year, I don't think he wins Pitcher of the Year. I think it's by the sheer volume of innings that he has pitched and the fact that he has maintained his dominance over that many innings makes him the shoe-in for the Pitcher of the Year.
And his team finished first.
Yes, that does help.
Well, I think he's got to be in the Dick Hauser Golden Spikes conversation as National Player of the Year. I've said this a few times. I think it'd be like a lineman winning the Heisman for a relief pitcher, but the relief pitcher hadn't won the SEC Pitcher of the Year since 2008, and he did that. And so I think people are taking notice. And I don't think this is the right way to vote for national awards, but you hear people say all the time, he's the best player on the best team in the country. Well, that's what Kevin Kopps is. And so if you look at a national award that way, I don't know why you wouldn't vote for him for something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the way you win the Heisman Trophy. It's the way you win a lot of awards. And your team wins, and you're the best player. And he's not just the best player. He's the difference maker. And there's a lot of time. I mean, Heston Kjerstad was probably the best player on the team last year, but I didn't look at him as a difference maker because here's the thing. If you have a great hitter, you can walk him. You don't have to pitch to him. You cannot. You can decide he's not going to beat you. Well, you can't do that with Kopps. He's going to beat you. He's going to come in and he's going to shut you down.
Yeah, so my question to you guys, I don't really have a whole lot to add. I think you nailed it, Clay. Have y'all decided that you're going to go buy some beet juice?
There's a lot of things that I'm not going to do, and that's one of them. It's like there's nothing about it that sounds great. Now I'm old, and if you tell me that it's going to help me be regular and some things like that, maybe I go to the prune juice at some point, but it doesn't sound like it's something that's going to help me be a better fly fisherman or a better rider. So no, I don't think so.
No.
I'm going to try
it. Just my answer, just no.
I'm going to try it. I have to. You have to at this point. The legend of Kevin Kopps has grown so big.
There's reasons not to. It looks like if you spilled it, it would cause an awful stain.
Mm-hmm.
So I dribble stuff on my shirt all the time, and I just would think that would be there's so many reasons not to do it.
But there's one really good reason too.
You want to be a closer?
Yeah, why not?
I'm past that. We mentioned Dave Van Horn got SEC Coach of the Year, first time in 17 years. SEC Coach of the Year typically is just an acknowledgement of whoever won the league. I mean, more often than not, that's how the coaches. If you have AP voting, sometimes they'll look at it different. Like I remember a couple of years ago, I think Calipari won SEC Basketball Coach of the Year by the coaches when Kentucky won the league, but the AP voted Buzz Williams, who had this really good turnaround at A&M. There are a lot of Tennessee fans who are upset that Tony didn't win the SEC Coach of the Year because of the way he's turned around that Tennessee program. But to me, he had already turned them around. I mean, in 19, they went to the regional. In 20, I think they started like 16-1 or 16-2, something like that. Really great start before the season got shut down. And this year they had a great season, but they lost to Arkansas. And I thought coaching decisions during that Tennessee series made the difference and helped Arkansas win that series.
Yeah. Plus, Tony kind of just looked like a banty rooster jumping around when he was trying to get in Dave's face. I love watching Dave. And if you watch the whole 4 or 5 minutes, how long was that, Matt?
Well, I think on the field it was maybe 30 to 45 seconds, but then
the first time
they had a second deal.
Time.
There was
several
on the field
minutes.
for probably about 2 or 3 minutes. Yeah.
So if you watch Dave's feet.
He never moves.
They never move. And Tony's bouncing around. You could tell he's like, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do. I don't know how to do this. I'm going to talk to him over here a little while. Then I'm going to move around here a little while. Dave just turns his head and his feet. It was the perfect balance for golf. He never moved his feet. And it was like Tony is like, I'm uncomfortable doing this. I don't know how to do this. I haven't really figured this part of coaching out, and that's the difference between Dave and Tony.
Yeah. Then, there's a lot of people talking about Casey Opitz and Brady Slavens didn't get on the all-SEC teams. With Opitz, I think it's interesting. Defensively, he did not have the year that he's had previously, at least in terms of, throwing out runners. I think runners were like 18 of 27 against him this season. But there are a couple of things that stood out to me. How many wild pitches do you think Kevin Kopps had in SEC play?
And he threw it in the dirt over
probably
and over.
75% of the
and
time.
You can see Casey, he's pointing at the dirt with runners in scoring position. Not that often because there weren't that many that got on base, but he would point to the dirt. And he did that with other pitchers too. Put it in the dirt. I know he had 3 pass balls, right? Wild pitches, how many was it?
Kevin?
Yeah.
0.
No, Opitz total.
Oh, Opitz, yeah. I mean, I think he had 3 pass balls.
Yeah,
and
but wild pitches.
There were wild pitches against him.
Yeah, wild pitches are on the pitcher. But if your catcher
is good enough, you can take them away.
He will eliminate those. And if you see, and I will tell you, they won games all year that they scored on wild pitches.
Mm-hmm.
Arkansas's offense.
Oh, yeah. I think I did that 2-out story midway through the season, and at that point, they'd already scored like 7 or 8 runs on wild pitches.
Yeah, and they don't give any. And you talk about you didn't have a great year of throwing runners out. That's because they didn't run on him.
No, you're right about that. They ran against Opitz. I think they ran against Opitz. I think he was 13th out of 14 catchers in the league in terms of how often they ran against him. But what I was saying with Kopps, 0 wild pitches in SEC play. And I think that's a credit to Opitz.
And that's a nasty, hard pitch to catch.
It's incredibly. Now, his hitting numbers weren't great through most of the SEC season, but he kind of got hot there toward the end. I think he had, a couple of multiple hit games against Georgia, had some big at-bats, I believe, at Tennessee.
Big hits,
yeah,
clutch.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know if he got robbed or not. The one thing that I thought was really interesting was that they put Hayden Dunhurst as the defensive catcher of the year.
No.
Teams ran against him more than any other catcher in the league. They ran 54 times against him in the regular season, and he threw out 14. That's why they were running against him. He can't throw him out. And so the fact that he got defensive catcher of the year, I thought was a little odd. That's where I thought Opitz really should have been a shoe-in. Would be to be defensive catcher of the year in the conference. Even though the throwout numbers weren't as good as they've been in the past, the fact that teams didn't run on him as much, and the fact that he just didn't let balls get by him. And Kopps isn't the only pitcher who pitches like that to him. There are a lot of pitchers on this staff who will bury pitches, when they've got 2 strikes on a batter trying to get them to swing through something. And more often than not, way more often than not, it didn't hurt the Razorbacks. Slavens is first base. I thought Will Frizzell was the best first baseman in the league this year. That's who got it from A&M. The other one was Trey Morgan at LSU, the freshman. Really good. I mean, he's going to be a really good player in this league. He and Dylan Cruz, the 2 freshmen on that LSU team, they were hitting 1 and 2, and they're freshmen.
Yeah, Slavens,
what did you think about Slavens?
Slavens is a case that you can argue that maybe he's slighted a little bit, but it's unfortunate. when you look at first base through the years, there's 14 first basemen in the SEC, obviously, and all 14 of those are really good players. That's a position in college baseball that hits, and hits with power and hits with numbers. Now, Frizzell did not have any really strong hitters around him. You can pitch around him, yet his numbers were still outstanding. And I think Brady benefited from really strength on either side of it. You know, it's like, you know, and I think that's one thing about this offense is you cannot pitch around guys because the next three can hit home runs.
Yep.
You know, if you pitch around, and I think what they did with pairing Slavens, Franklin, they moved back in the order a little bit.
Moved into fifth for most of the year.
And moved more back in the order. And it's because of you got Wallace, and you know, it's right-left sometimes with Dave, but the way he stacked his power, you could not pitch around. And I think Slavens benefited from that as well. But I'd love to watch his approach at the plate. He goes up, and if the first pitch is anywhere – if you can touch it, he's hacking.
Yep.
And I mean, there's been so many power moments where it's like heat against this awesome rip. And, you know, one of my friends is Todd Butler, and I think I'm going to see him next week. And he originally signed him at Wichita State. And then he tried to recruit him at Missouri. He was going head to head with Dave and lost that battle, you know, on the second go round. And, he called me and he says, hey, Dave's going to get this guy. And he says, he will hit 15 to 20 home runs in the SEC. And he still might. I guess he's at 13.
Yeah, he's 13.
Yeah, so I would be surprised if he didn't hit a couple more and get to 15.
Oh, yeah.
And he also said he might lead the league in RBI. Well, boom, he's done that. And I said, well, Todd, what's he do? And he says, he slashes. And he says, if they throw it by you, then he slashes again. You know, I've seen some guys choke up a little bit. Not Brady Slavens.
Yeah. At Johnson County.
Strike, yeah.
At Johnson County last year, I think he had 14 home runs and 47 RBI in 22 games before the season got shut down. And I know that's different kind of competition, but sometimes you see junior college players hit like that, and it doesn't translate into.
Yeah, Braden Webb is an example of
right.
that.
And so. Or sometimes, you know, they might hit, but it takes till, Brad Dunn, who works with us, you know, he would always talk about basketball players. He said if you sign a junior college basketball player, sometimes it would be the second half of the SEC season before you'd really start to see them, you know, kind of come into their own. And I think that's probably kind of the same thing with baseball players is, you know, they've got to see this type of pitching a number of times, or maybe they'll have a really good non-conference portion, and then they see SEC pitching and they really trail off. That's never really happened this year with Slavens.
Well, and he came here without a position, and he's been pretty good at first base. And that's part of what I'm a little disappointed because I didn't think Will Frizzell was really a dynamic defensive first baseman. But it might, you know, all SEC, they may not even look at defense. You know, they've got an all-defensive team, and then they've got a position team, and it's probably just about numbers.
I will say this. I think Slavens has done a really good – he reminds me a little bit of Ezel a couple of years ago in that he had – I don't know that he hadn't played first base, but I don't think he had played it very much. And so he certainly played it more this year than he'd ever played it before. And I thought with Ezel in 19, you could really see him become a much better fielding first baseman throughout the year. And I think you're starting to kind of see that with Brady now. You know, there are a lot of times where it looks like a ball, you know, it could get by a first baseman, and you know, he'll make a pretty good play on it and may not get the out, but he may save a run, you know, save a base, something like that. So I think he's been really good defensively, and I think he's gotten a lot better defensively this year. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the week ahead, the SEC tournaments this week. Also, upcoming this week, regional sites are going to be announced, NCAA tournament selection show, much more to get to on the WholeHog Baseball Podcast presented by Massage Envy.
WholeHogSports.com has the largest, most experienced staff of reporters covering sports in Arkansas. Football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, and more. You'll find it at WholeHogSports.com. The website includes up-to-minute news, daily commentaries, and award-winning photography from the staffs of Hogs Illustrated and the Democrat Gazette. For subscriptions, call 1-800-757-6277. That's 1-800-757-6277. Or visit us online today, WholeHogSports.com.
Massage Envy with clinics in Rogers and Fayetteville has been awarded Northwest Arkansas's Best Day Spa and Best Massage. One of the reasons is our care for athletes, both serious and recreational. We now offer rapid tension relief sessions using a high-caliber vibrating tool and total body stretch sessions like the ones used by the PGA. Both of these new services can be combined with the always popular deep muscle treatment. So whether you compete or just want to relax, there is no place better than Massage Envy. Welcome back to the WholeHog Baseball Podcast. Let's take a look at the week ahead, presented by Grease Pig.
It's SEC Tournament Week. Arkansas is going to open the tournament on Wednesday with a game against Georgia in Hoover. The game's scheduled to begin at 4:30 on Wednesday afternoon, but you know how the SEC Tournament goes. It's the third game of the day, and so depending on what happens before them, there could be a delay in the start time. The week ahead is brought to you by the Grease Pig. For 20 years, they have specialized in serving UA students, faculty, and staff. With 2 locations in Fayetteville on College Avenue and MLK Boulevard, the Grease Pig has experience for all your repair needs and, of course, complete service oil changes, staffed with ASE certified master technicians. They also provide tires and alignment service at their location on College Avenue. The Grease Pig is all about taking care of you, and they are a proud sponsor of the week ahead. The Razorbacks are guaranteed to play 2 games in Hoover. They'll play Georgia on Wednesday, and then on Thursday they will play either Vanderbilt or Ole Miss. It's a tough bracket that they're in, but then again, if you were to look at the other side of the SEC tournament bracket, you'd probably say it's tough too. That's just the nature of this conference. Georgia came into Fayetteville, and they very easily could have won the series. They had Arkansas down 3-0 in Game 3, and Arkansas had to have one of those comebacks that allowed them to win that series earlier this month. Georgia, of course, won the series at Vanderbilt. It's a team that is a lot more capable, I feel like, than what their 31-23 record shows. They've had some injuries. Had an injury in the Arkansas series. Ryan Webb is out for the season. That's their main starter. He got injured. I think he was already injured coming into it, and that pretty much just sealed the deal on his season. But that's a good team, and of course, we know how good Vanderbilt and Ole Miss are.
The thing about Georgia that's significant, I think, in their pitching is that they've really got a lot of left-handers, and I think that's a little bit of a problem for Arkansas. I think that, of course, you've got switch hitters and Opitz and more, but I think both those guys would rather hit left-handed, or at least their numbers would show that. And Georgia has the ability to turn those guys around for a whole game if they want to. They can go left, all the way through their bullpen.
Right. Yeah, they had was it Jaden? Is it Jaden Woods or Jaden Fields? I think it's Jaden Woods, who pitched against LSU on Tuesday night, and he pitched 4 innings against Arkansas earlier this year, and he was really good. And they're going to throw a left-hander against Arkansas today, but it's going to be Charlie Goldstein, and he hasn't pitched a whole lot this season. I don't think he pitched in Fayetteville. They were going to throw Liam Sullivan, who was their Game 1 starter against the Razorbacks, and in that game, he struck out 11 in 6 innings. Was really good, and it goes to show, like what you were saying, even with Ryan Webb out, they still have a really strong collection of left-handers. It reminds me a little bit of the A&M staffs that you see whenever, they just parade left-handers out of the bullpen all weekend.
Yeah, and I think even good right-handed hitters sometimes struggle with lefties. It's just weird. You don't see a lot of it. You don't see a lot of left-handers in the fall when you're playing. So it's just something that Arkansas has not been strong. I don't know what their numbers say, but it just feels like they're susceptible to left-handed pitcher.
If they play Ole Miss, they're not going to see Doug Ncaa. He pitched on Tuesday night against Auburn. Of course, Gunnar Hoagland is out for the season. Seems like Ole Miss might be a little bit better matchup for them from a starting pitching perspective than Vanderbilt, because against Vanderbilt they would see either Kumar Rocker or Jack Leiter in Game 2.
Yeah, let's talk about Vanderbilt a little bit, because that's the fascination, and I think that's the game everybody around the country thinks that those might be. For all the talk about Tennessee, I think that there's great feeling around the country that Vanderbilt's kind of the one to watch, just because when you get to Omaha, the games are spaced out, and your starting pitching does not have to be as deep, and you can go really 2 weeks with Rocker and Leiter pitching. Would you rather face Leiter or would you rather face Rocker?
Leiter.
Why is that?
Because Rocker's been better. Leiter has not pitched as well over the last 2 months. He had I think if you asked me during the first month of the season, I might have said you'd have a better chance facing Rocker because Leiter was so good. I mean, he had the no-hitter against somebody. I don't remember who it was that he no-hit. And then he came back the next week and threw 7 no-hit innings and was taken out due to pitch count. I mean, he had that stretch there at one point this season where you would have said, I know they're going to be maybe 1-2 or 2-3 in the draft this year, but you might have had a lot of people say, hey, I'd rather take Jack Leiter over Kumar Rocker, but I think Rocker's thrown better over the last couple of months.
I was going to give you more specific. I was just curious to what you would say. I was afraid I was just going to say, you're right, Matt. I hate doing that. But the difference between the two is that early Leiter was throwing his fastball, which is, 96, 97, 98, and he had a lights-out breaker. He lost that breaker about halfway through the season, could not throw it for strikes, and there were about 3 or 4 outings in a row where everybody just sat on his fastball.
Beginning with Georgia when they hit like 7 home runs off of him, I think.
And it was like, okay, we can hit that. It's a straight fastball. If you're not worried about a breaker, and it's just like anybody else. If you don't have an off speed, you don't have a changeup, you don't have something to keep you off balance. College hitters with these aluminum bats, they will hit, the hard fastball. And they set him out for a weekend, and all he did is throw bullpens and worked on his curveball. And he's been a little better, but I think you're absolutely right. Rocker is the guy on that staff.
I was wrong. It was Rocker that Georgia lit up.
They lit him
game.
up too.
Yeah,
but I think Leiter gave up home runs too.
Not against Georgia. Against Georgia, he was really good. They won that game 5-1 against.
But I mean his home run.
No.
numbers.
I know what you're saying. Yeah. Teams have hit home runs against him. Really, I think outside of that Georgia game, Rocker hasn't given up just a whole lot of home runs this year. Did give one up against Kentucky. And speaking of giving up home runs against Kentucky, Vanderbilt. They're for all people talk about Arkansas's bullpen and the problems that they've had, the struggles that they've had. I would take Arkansas's bullpen over Vanderbilt's bullpen any day of the week, because once you get past Rocker and Leiter and game 1 and game 2, their game 3s on the weekend have been a mess. Every single weekend, almost the entire year. It was that case against Kentucky the other day. They would be the 2 seed in this conference, except for they were down to their last strike. And they gave up a 3-run home run to Kentucky. And then Kentucky came back, I think, hit a 2-run home run later in the inning. And that's what allowed Tennessee to win the SEC East over Vanderbilt. Their bullpen, I think, makes Vanderbilt really susceptible, especially if Rocker or Leiter are not on in a weekend.
Yeah, I really, and this kind of goes back to, what I think of Arkansas. And, there's an awful lot of Kevin Kopp's talk, rightfully so, not enough Caden Monk talk.
And he's been really good.
And there's a lot of teams around the league that would not be able to pitch him in middle relief. They just would. I mean, he's just too good.
They would need him
He'd be
as
a starter or a closer.
Yep.
And I think he would be an excellent closer. If
he may be the closer next year.
He likely could be, because I think Wiggins is going to be a starting pitcher.
I do too. Yep. Yeah, and I think I think they're starting to figure out some things with their pitching staff about how to use them, and the way that they've used Kopps this year has made it, I think, more difficult to figure out roles than maybe in past years. Because in past years, if you have to take out your starting pitcher, you probably got to find 2 or 3 pitchers to find that. And I say you take them out early. You might have to have 2 or 3 pitchers to get you to your closer if you're in a position to win the game at the end. There have been so many times this year that after 4 innings, 5, what was it that in the Georgia game, I think they brought Kopps in like the 5th inning, right? In the finale, and he pitched 4 1/3 innings or something like that. They're just, and I guess where I'm trying to go with this is that his number of innings has caused them to not quite be able to figure out how you would use other pitchers. And I think it's just now that you're starting to figure out that Caden Monk probably isn't as good the second time in a weekend. Ryan Costu he's going to get you 4 or 5 outs pretty consistently, but after that, and so I think they're really starting to figure out some things with their pitching staff in the back end, and I think that'll benefit them going into the postseason.
Costu is what he can go through the lineup one time. That's it.
If he can go through it an entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think getting to 3 innings has been an issue for him. I think and that's why they took him out in the Tennessee game.
He loses command.
Yes, I mean he had retired. What was it, Seth? 4 batters, I think, against Tennessee.
He took out 4, and then they put in Wiggins.
I mean, he was pitching phenomenally against the Volunteers, but the book on him had been that once he gets past about that 4th or 5th out, he does not pitch very well, and teams start to hit him, and that's why they brought Wiggins in. And of course, it backfired on him.
So let's talk about this. Peyton Paulette is done for the year. He's not going to pitch for sure in Hoover, and I think we know that he's done.
Yeah.
So who gets that spot? Does everybody move up?
I think it's Bolden.
See, I wonder if it might be Connor Nolan.
Well, I think there's innings that are created for Connor Nolan because Bolden and Paulette were throwing on weekends together. So I definitely think it opens the door for Nolan. I think it opens the door maybe for a different type of I'm interested to see what they're going to do with Lyle Lockhart because I could maybe see Wiggins being the 3rd starter because he seems like he's a lot more comfortable in the starting role right now than whenever he comes out of the bullpen. And I think Lockhart's been really good for him.
Wiggins definitely, I think, has to start an inning.
Yeah, that's maybe a good point.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's starting or coming in, it's got to be to start an inning where he's in. And here's what I see about Wiggins. He's really good pitching out of the full windup. He's not as good out of the stretch.
Mm-hmm.
He loses a little command. And I had it figured out at one point which side he's losing command to, but I can't call it right now. But you could see a difference when he was in the stretch. And there's a lot of young pitchers that are like that. And that's why you see sometimes the guys like, okay, we're not going to let you pitch out of the windup anymore. You're going to pitch out of the stretch. Isaiah Campbell was that way.
Yep.
And then he finally
got
figured
better
out
last year.
The stretch, and then he could go back to pitching in the windup if he wanted to.
But I think Bolden, I think that's who –
You may be right.
I think that's who's going to have to step in and get those innings from Paulette. And they've kind of been used in a similar way. I mean, Paulette has usually been 4 to 5 innings on a weekend, right?
Yeah.
And that's about what Bolden can give you. It's about 4 good innings. And so I think that – with Connor Nolan coming back, I definitely think that there's a role for him in the bullpen. But I'm interested to see how they use Lockhart because I think he could be a key to the back end that they haven't had all season because he's been in starting roles. I know he's starting this weekend, and maybe you hold him back because you might need a Game 4 starter in a regional or something like that. But depending on the situation, if you feel like you've got a team on the ropes, I could maybe see him coming in a relief type outing.
It looked like he was struggling, and then they gave him a weekend off.
That made all the difference.
When he came back, he looked like he had regained some giddy up on his fastball. He was 2 miles an hour better when he came back.
You know who his team growing up was, don't you?
LSU.
And that was the game where he really got rocked, and then they took him out. I almost think it's maybe good for him that they're playing Georgia today.
He's trying too hard.
That they're playing Georgia today instead of LSU because I think that might have been – maybe I'm wrong, but I think that there might be something to that he was really amped up to play his boyhood team.
This team is unique in the sense that you do have a Friday guy, obviously, in Patrick Wicklander, and he's going to go in, and you have a guy that can be at the back of your bullpen in Kevin Kopps, but the amount of innings that you get from everybody else has just been different this year than in past years, in the fact of you're going to get Caden Monk and Caleb Bolden, and they can give you – not Monk, sorry, I didn't mean to say Monk. You got Bolden and you got Nolan and you got guys like Lockhart that are really good for like 3-4 innings, but then past that, it's just a big fat question mark. And so you kind of look at that, and that can make, Razorback fans nervous. That can make, just anybody question that part of the bullpen. But then you think about it, we haven't even mentioned a guy like Zebulon Vermillion that can come in. And then you have guys like Heston Toll that's proven that he can take an inning from somebody somewhere down the stretch as well. So I think that there are spots for this team that they don't have to be the team with, like, they don't have to be Vanderbilt. In other words, they don't have to have a Kumar Rocker and a Jack Leiter to eat up 7 innings every time. If you get a good start from Patrick Wicklander, and then from then on, you can pitch 4 innings with Bolden, and that would be a good start for him. You can go to the bullpen, and, with Paulette gone, you can go get maybe 2 from Vermillion, 2 from Nolan. There's options for this team that I, don't think that if an injury happened to a key cog in the bullpen in past years, it could have been a detriment to the team. It could have ended the season. I just don't think that's the case with this team.
I thought 2 of the best games they pitched this year were against Arkansas State and Game 3 against Florida, when they were just treating it like a midweek game and giving everybody an inning. You go do your job for 3 outs, and then we'll go to somebody else.
Yeah, and Arkansas State has some decent bats.
Yeah.
I think they hit against a lot of teams.
I think they had 3 players coming into that series that were batting like 330 or higher. And so they shut them down, and 4 of their runs were, they scored 4 runs. 3 of them were unearned.
Yeah, after
because
that
of errors.
pop-up, yeah.
Do you like the SEC tournament? I don't.
Well, I will say I don't pay much attention to it, Matt. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm talking about all the games.
No, I know what you mean.
I watch Arkansas. Obviously that's my job, but I'm more interested in regular season games because I think there's value in the regular season game. I don't think there's much value in this tournament.
No, I don't either. I mean, I think there's value.
It's a fundraiser.
There's value for some teams like Georgia. I mean, if Georgia beats Arkansas after they've already beaten LSU, they're probably getting into the NCAA tournament as a 3 seed. If they don't win a game in Hoover, they may be on the outside looking in.
Cleats.
Right. I think that there are a lot of people who look at the SEC tournament as being like the championship.
Yeah.
And I don't understand that. I think that there is such more value in winning a 30-game regular season championship because of all the – I mean, it's an accumulation of your entire season. And I think there's a lot more value in that. But I think there are some people who get so upset that they don't play the same way in Hoover that they play during the regular season. And I'm not talking that they're trying to throw games or anything, but they don't treat the games as important in Hoover as some years. I know that there have been some years where they needed to go there and do well, but Kevin Kopps isn't going to throw more than maybe 2 innings this week in Hoover.
I'll give you a case in point. It was 2 years ago, 3 years ago that they got to the finals. They pitched pretty deep and they got back to Fayetteville and
it was in 17.
Yeah, and
Kevin Kopps started the SEC championship game against LSU.
And Dave Van Horn is like, we can't even practice for 2 days. We've been down in the heat. We've got we're worried about our regional.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to be really careful with this part of the year. You go to Hoover and it's 95 degrees. You haven't played in any kind of heat like that. You get dehydrated, then you can't practice, then you miss a bullpen, and all at once you're in a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And the coaches are it's like going through a minefield. It's like, I don't want to go very hard at this. I want to, let's take care of our arms. Let's get to the regional. And you see somebody that just pitched 3 innings, and he's like, he just shut down the other team, without a hit or a walk or anything, and you just took him out.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to win the game. Well, there's something to that. They don't, they want to win the game, but they're not going to risk anything that will tire out their team.
There's got to be some better format, guys, than what the SEC does. They tried to, with taking away the true double elimination tournament after you make it past the first round, they've tried a way to limit games. There's got to be a better way to teams aren't playing possibly.
Not play
Didn't they used to have
5 and 6
don't play them.
Didn't they used to have a double elimination? It was like double elimination throughout the week, and then maybe double elimination once you got to the weekend. Am I wrong about that?
Oh yeah, the idea
used to have
was
to throw a lot more.
The idea was, okay, we're going to simulate the College World Series. No,
you can't do that in such a short amount of time. And the tournament used to be 1 day shorter too.
Yeah, and you got 14 teams. So I mean, they leave. So it would not bother me if they took it down to 8 teams.
Yeah,
and it's like, all right, we're not going to hurt a team that's not going to the NCAA tournament. And if you are going to the NCAA tournament, you're not going to change your seed from a 3 to a 2 by winning a couple of games. So let's limit it to eight teams.
I just don't see the SEC doing that because, first of all, the words that you already used, Clay, it's a fundraiser. So the more games, that means the more money that they're going to make. And let's just be blatantly honest. That's why the SEC tournament is there. It's to make money. But also, I think in a conference like the SEC, I just don't know if 8 is enough. You have a team like Alabama right now that's fighting for their postseason lives. They beat South Carolina, and if they win one more game, they're kind of on the bubble coming into this thing. So they win another game, they might have played their way into it, and I think they're an 11 seed. That's a question mark. I don't know.
Who are we talking about?
Alabama.
Yeah, they were the 11 seed, yes.
So, there is the possibility.
10 seed.
that they would have missed the tournament and they can play their way into the NCAA tournament because of the SEC tournament. But I agree. They're not going to get rid of it because it's a fundraiser. So you got to figure out a better way to where you're playing, 4 games tops, like the worst case scenario, in my opinion.
In the SEC, I don't think it matters as much because there's so many teams.
Oh, it always matters more.
Well, I don't think it matters as much to win the SEC tournament because there's so many teams that are getting into the NCAA anyway. You're looking at 8 to 10 teams most years that are getting into the NCAA. I've never understood the smaller conferences who are willing to give away their automatic bid based on 1 week of play, whether it be a baseball tournament or a basketball tournament. I mean, think about March Madness. How many times have you seen where a conference might have a team that's like 25-2 in the regular season, but then they get upset in the conference tournament, or there's somebody that's come through the conference tournament and won with like a 14-18 record or something? Well, that's not going to give you your best chance in the NCAA tournament. To have that type of team playing in the first round, they're going to lose almost every time. And, the same thing goes for the baseball tournament. I've never quite understood why you want to give your seed or your automatic bid to the NCAA tournament to a team that played well for 1 weekend that may have not played well for 11 weekends.
So that's why you go to 8 teams, because all those teams are already in the NCAA
tournament. Yeah, and like I said,
anyway.
in the SEC, it's not that big of a deal because, all those teams are getting into the tournament anyway. I think the best thing for you in the SEC tournament is maybe if you go 1-2, because you've won a game and you kind of feel good because you played well enough to get a win, but then you don't have to get to the weekend, having to throw all your arms, and you get to take a couple of days off. You think back to, was it South Carolina series when they got to take the weekend off and how the players talked about how refreshed they felt after they got a weekend off? I think that would really feel good for them at this time of year. Yeah. Well, I think we all do.
Especially, Memorial Day weekend.
Well, and that's a good segue, Seth, because I did want to talk about the regional site and the selection show. The sites are going to be announced Sunday night. I think we all know Arkansas is going to be one of those 16 that gets picked to host a regional. And then the NCAA tournament selection show is Monday at 11 a.m. It's always on Memorial Day. There have only been 2 times that I've covered this team that I haven't worked on Memorial Day. It was last year, and it was in 2016. Otherwise, it's a busy work day because that's when you're figuring out here are the teams who are coming. Sometimes if you're not hosting, you're getting plane tickets, booked to Tempe or wherever they're playing. And so as we look at the tournament selection, I'm going to be really interested to see how tough of a field Arkansas has. Because we talked to Kendall Rogers about this last week about whether or not the 1 seed gets some protection in terms of, you don't get the best 2 seed in the best 1 seed's field. I'll be really interested to see who they match up Arkansas with.
Or you get a 4 seed that you can throw Heston Toe
exactly.
for 4 innings.
And so, if you go just on a true regional feel, ORU would be the 4th seed in Arkansas's bracket this year. But ORU also went to LSU and won 2 of 3 this year. That's a pretty darn good 4 seed.
We know what ORU can bring to Fayetteville. They are a competitive club.
Mm-hmm.
You don't. That's not the 4 seed that you want to see, but it might be.
And I saw
that saves them a lot of money. That's a bus trip.
Exactly. Yeah.
I saw somebody with a projection. I don't think it was D1 baseball, but they had Louisiana Tech as the 2 seed.
That would be. I think Arkansas is a lot better than they were when they went to Ruston earlier this year.
Louisiana Tech's in the talk for a host. I don't think you deserve.
But I think they kind of choked toward the end of the. I didn't say choked, but I think they've struggled toward the end of the year to where now there's some doubt about whether or not they would be a regional host. Whereas 4 weeks ago, I don't think there would have been any doubt that they would be one of the 16. Oklahoma State is a team that there's some talk about could be a 2 seed. I think they won like their first 13 games of this season or something. They've been really good, but they've struggled over the back half of the Big 12 season. Nebraska is a team that I've heard could be a 2 seed. That would be really interesting because Will Bolt is the head coach now at Nebraska. That's the one who had the nickname Little DVH when he played for Van Horn with the Cornhuskers. So I'll be really interested to see because sometimes it's a true regional feel. In 2017, it was Oklahoma State, Missouri State, and ORU. Nobody had to travel more than 3 hours to get to Fayetteville. And then 2 years ago when Arkansas hosted a regional, Central Connecticut State and Cal Berkeley were sent over 1,000 miles each to get here. And so I've given up trying to figure out who the teams are going to be in regionals because it's just so unpredictable from one year to the next.
Not going to be Dallas Baptist.
Well, I don't know if they won their conference.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, Louisiana Tech is 8-7 over their last.
Yeah, so I think they've struggled a little bit. They did not win their conference. I believe Charlotte won.
Oh, Charlotte. Yeah.
I think Charlotte won that conference.
Old Dominion's also ranked, and they lost.
But that's a really good conference, by the way. You've got Charlotte, you've got Old Dominion, Louisiana Tech, and Southern Miss. Walker Powell, who you know from Fayetteville High School, has been an incredible pitcher for them, and he threw a no-hitter, I think, 2 weeks ago. They came here to Fayetteville and played in the regional in 2018, and he pitched in that one, and he's gotten really good.
He's battled back. Is it from 2 arm problems?
I know he's had some injuries, and I think that's why he's still there. I mean, in 2018, that was
Tommy John surgery
a long time ago. Yeah. All right. So, NCAA tournament selection show is going to be Monday at 11 a.m. And next week, we'll have a good feel of who the Razorbacks are going to play. We're going to take another break, and we're going to talk a little bit about other things going on within the program and around the SEC. This is the WholeHog Baseball Podcast presented by Massage Envy.
Massage Envy with clinics in Rogers and Fayetteville has been awarded Northwest Arkansas's Best Day Spa and Best Massage. One of the reasons is our care for athletes, both serious and recreational. We now offer rapid tension relief sessions using a high-caliber vibrating tool and total body stretch sessions like the ones used by the PGA. Both of these new services can be combined with the always popular deep muscle treatment. So whether you compete or just want to relax, there is no place better than Massage Envy. Want more coverage of your home team? Download the WholeHog Sports Video on Demand app. Check out the Fan Zone and get up-to-the-minute videos, podcasts, and features on football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, and more. Search for WholeHog Sports on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire at home. And take it with you on the go by downloading it for your mobile device in your app store. The WholeHog Sports Video on Demand app. Get it today.
We mentioned it earlier, Peyton Pallette is not going to pitch this weekend in Hoover, and he's probably out for the season. They haven't given an official diagnosis of what's going on with him, but it looked like he was pointing at his elbow during the Florida series. And it's one of those deals where I think it was like one pitch he was 94, the next pitch he was 83. That's never a good sign. It's all the telltale of potentially a pretty severe elbow problem.
When Jalen Battles patted him on his back, like, sorry, buddy.
Yeah, it did not look good. And so, we mentioned this without Pallette. It's interesting to see how this team is going to look because even though he hasn't been real consistent this year, outside of Wicklander and Copps, he's been, most weekends he's going to throw the third most innings for you. And so that's a significant injury.
And if he's on, he's been terrific.
Yeah.
So you have that. And I think they figure out pretty quickly is he on or not, and they get him out. If he's got command, then he was good for usually 3-4 innings.
I think he threw 6 innings against A&M, and they took him out to get to Copps because they felt like that was the play in a 1-0 game. I think the next
they were
week.
Right.
Well, actually, Copps gave up the home run.
Yeah.
That was.
But he got a victory.
Yeah. And, when Copps, he gave up that 2-out run in the 9th inning against Tennessee, that snapped 28 consecutive innings, which was one short of the school record by David Walling. And it was the home run against A&M that, was his previous run that he had given up. But yeah, Pallette, he's pitched well for him. And so it'll be interesting to see how the bullpen bounces back from that. Braden Webb is going to, he's traveled with the team to Hoover. Dave Van Horn said that he probably will not start, or I guess he said he won't start the first game of the tournament, whereas he probably would have started it before his arrest.
He's going to watch a little while.
Yeah, you hear Dave say that a lot, don't you? I will say this. Based on my interactions with Webb, I was shocked whenever I saw the arrest report for him because and I know that when alcohol gets involved, everything goes out the window, but it just seems so out of character for him. And I hate it that people who don't know him or aren't around him, that's what they're going to know him as is because of that arrest, when I think it's really out of character.
Yep. Now he can restart, refocus, and see if he can change some minds. It's he's really had some nice, even though his batting average is low, he's had some big moments for the team defensively and offensively.
Really some great defensive moments. He had I don't know if it saved a home run, but he had that catch against Texas Tech out against the wall that was really big in the season opener. Was it
against Florida? He had a nice catch up against the wall.
Was it Florida? It was the first game of the Florida series, right?
Yep.
Yep. And I think he had a nice one against Tennessee as well. So they've been really good in the outfield whenever he's played. And we saw this in what game was it of the Florida series, Seth? I think game 1. We talked about how Dave is going to win this game. He's throwing everything in there. They brought Nesbitt in as a defensive replacement like the 5th inning. They brought Webb in as a defensive replacement, I think, in the 6th inning. They brought Cobbs in, to throw when Patrick Wicklander was throwing pretty well, even though his pitch count was getting high. They brought Charlie, I almost call him Charlie Pinch because that's what he's done, but Charlie Welch is a pinch hitter, I think, in the 5th inning, and he gets that dribbler down the line.
I call him Charlie Bomb Welch.
He's been so good. I mean, he has been so good. And I thought that on Saturday in Game 3 of the Florida series, when he came to the plate, it reminded there was only one other time that I can think of a player got an ovation like that on Arkansas's team. When Hunter Wilson came back for ORU, he got a big ovation when they played a midweek game. But for Arkansas's team, I can only think of one ovation like that, and it was the day after James McCann hit his walk-off home run against LSU 10 years ago when he had Cutlass Strong Tower. That was his walk-up song. And the minute that first note of that song started, there was this huge ovation in the crowd. Now, that was a smaller crowd because it was a Sunday crowd, and it was that post-church crowd earlier in the game. Welch came in on a Saturday, packed house, like 7th inning of the game. And when he came up, it was as loud of an ovation as I can ever remember inside that stadium. And it was a really cool moment.
Yeah,
and then he got the hit on top of that.
So he's a Florida guy. Florida turned him down. He played travel ball with some of the pitchers that he faced. And I think that you could probably say that he had a charmed weekend. I mean, just to be a part of those 2 victories and be a factor in both of them. I will say he started his home run trot about the time the ball hit the wall.
Exactly.
And it's like, uh-oh.
I better hustle. Yep. Yeah, so
I bet his coach told him about that a little bit later.
Am I right about this? Is he 8 for 12 as a pinch hitter this year? I think he's 8 for 12 as a pinch hitter.
Yeah, it's right at that.
And he is 6 for 9 as a pinch hitter in SEC games. And then, Seth, we talked about how
it's not just hits, it's slugging percentage, too, in those 8 hits.
That's what I was going to say. We've talked about how we like to go to OPS now more than batting average because, we just feel like it's maybe a better statistical.
Sure.
You know what his OPS is?
Is it over 1,000?
1417. He's got an 895 slugging percentage and something over 500 on base.
The crazy thing is, I think it's been over 1,000.
You can't do that playing wiffle ball.
No, I think it's been over 1,000 all year.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't remember exactly how he started his season out, but for about the middle of the year, you would just always skip over his name because he wasn't getting a lot of hits.
And he's doing it.
And didn't have as many at-bats.
In the last month, it's SEC games.
Yeah.
Nobody.
6 for 9 in SEC games.
You don't go up during the SEC play. Usually you go down. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, the dude can hit.
Yeah, that's in case you're wondering, that's just under doubling the MLB average for OPS.
Yeah, I mean and I know he hadn't had as many at bats, but it's been pretty incredible to watch what he's done. SEC news this week: A&M fired Rob Childress. Did you hear Dave Van Horn's comments about it? I mean, he did not hold back in his in his criticism of the Aggies for letting go of what he said was a really good coach.
I wasn't really sure he was talking about Texas A&M because he never mentioned it.
Well, exactly. Yeah. What did he say? He said
that school.
I don't feel like I need to say their name right now. Yeah. So, and of course, Dave and Rob Childress are very close.
Dave's a beauty. I mean, I love talking with him, and and hear some off the record conversations. He is a beauty.
Yeah.
I mean, it is seldom that he bypass. He's kind of like Brady Slavens. He's going to take his hacks. He's going to say what he thinks. Mm-hmm. He's going to say what he means. And I asked him one time about how good he is in press conferences and when all the other coaches are doing coach speak, and he'll just – and you'll see him, and it's almost like, I'm going to say coach speak. No, I'm going to go ahead and tell you what I think. And it was – I believe that it was early in he was a graduate assistant under Norm and saw Norm do an interview.
Oh, yeah. It was at the Huntsville Regional. I know this story.
And that Norm got up there and was just magical in how he handled it and said exactly, he said exactly this. Well, two coaches went before him and they all did coach speak, you know, like, we're happy to be here, blah, blah, blah. And then Norm got up and he told the media the same thing he had told the coaches and his players. And he goes, if I'm ever a head coach, that's the way I'm going to do it.
I mean, this was less than 2 years before he became a head coach at Texarkana. So, I mean, he's following Norm around, kind of, you know, being groomed for the job, so to speak.
Understudy.
And so you know, those were the days when graduate assistants could go out and recruit. And I've heard Norm talk about, he would just turn to Dave, okay, you know, who stands out to you? That guy. And those would be the two best players on the field. But he had gone with him to a press conference at the Huntsville Regional, and he actually told this story during the when he was inducted into the Arkansas Sports Hall of Fame back in January of 19. And he said, you know, it was basically with the thought of, I'm going there to learn how to do this part of the head coaching job. And I've always said that when you hear Dave in a press conference, you can learn more in 30 minutes with him than you could in an hour and a half with another coach. It's just because he doesn't beat around the bush. He tells you exactly, you know, he answers your question, and he doesn't really waste time when he's talking to you. He answers the question, gets out, and moves on.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, and you know, Bob Holt's one of my favorite, and it was after the Tony Vitalo, Dave Van Horn deal, and it's, you know, just a classic great ball game. And the first question from Bob was, well, what happened with you and Tony? I don't know if that's the exact question, that's pretty much. And Dave says, oh, we're going to start there? We're just going to skip the game?
Hey, you don't want to talk about the game? It's a good game, Bob. Yeah.
And he was fine talking about it. He told what he wanted to say, and that's it. But it's like he is real comfortable in those settings because he's just, you know, he's just himself.
Going back to A&M.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Going back to A&M. There was a report in the Lubbock Avalanche Journal that they offered Tim Tadlock $1.2 million a year. Now, Tadlock's going to stay at Texas Tech, but that tells you that A&M is not playing around. They're going to go out and try to make a splash with this baseball hire, similar to the way they did with Jimbo Fisher a couple of years ago in their football.
Yeah, it would have been a blow to the folks in Lubbock if they, right after they lost Chris Beard to Texas.
And then I think that was in the mind of Kirby Hocutt, their AD, is we can't lose our other great coach to another in-state program.
Yeah, Kirby's like, I need to find another job.
Yeah.
I can't keep my coaches. Now, it's an interesting time in college baseball. There are people starting to figure out you can make money in college baseball, and it's important to our fans that, you know, if you want to be competitive in college baseball because people do care.
And you can make a really good living. I mean, I remember when the Red Sox won the World Series in 2018 and Alex Cora was making $800,000 a year as their manager. You can make a lot better living than that coaching college baseball at some places.
I don't know how far that goes in Boston.
And that's what I was saying. You're living in these little college towns where your money can be stretched out a lot farther. Now, you have MLB managers, you know, the Joe Maddens of the world who are making $5-6 million, I'm sure. And even these guys who are making only, in quotation marks, $800,000, there's big incentives and bonuses that are written into their contract. They're certainly not hurting for money. But, you know, it started with Jim Schlossnagle. I think he was the first $1 million a year coach at TCU. And that's another one that A&M is reportedly targeting, is Schlossnagle at TCU. But Van Horn, Maneri, O'Sullivan, they're all making, you know, really, really nice salaries. And it goes to show how much college baseball has grown. The other job that could come open this offseason is LSU. And when they lost to Georgia in Hoover on Tuesday night, they had a shot of Paul Maneri. And as I was watching, I was thinking, is this going to be the last time that we see Maneri in the dugout? I think LSU should be in the tournament. If you look at their resume, it almost the same as South Carolina's, who is one of the 20 teams that are being considered to host a regional. But I think LSU is probably going to come open at the end of the season, and there's no telling what kind of domino effect LSU coming open could cause, because they're going to go out and get someone who's established, great head coach.
Yeah, Tennessee better do something pretty good for Tony Vitello because he's the first person both of those programs are going to call.
And do you think that's why Texas A&M is moving so fast? Is because if they can fill that vacancy before LSU opens?
Well, also part of that was that I think everybody knew they were going to move on from Childress because they didn't give him a contract extension. They basically all they didn't fire him. They just let his contract run out. That's essentially what happened. But they didn't make Hoover. I think that's that's the real deal is that they got about a 3-day start because their season ended on Saturday. LSU's season still isn't over technically until we know what happens during the NCAA, selection show.
Yeah, but even then, if you are Texas A&M, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the facts here, and LSU's just a better baseball job than Texas
LSU is one of the top 3 or 4 jobs in the country.
So if I can, and I think it was beneficial almost that they didn't make the SEC tournament because they can get that head start and they can make a run at Tadlock at Texas Tech, and then that didn't work out, and so now you're on to option 2, and LSU, while they may be working some stuff in the background without Maneri knowing or whatever, they can't officially do anything until they fire Maneri, and that might not happen if they make the NCAA tournament.
I think he's gone at the end of this season unless they go to Omaha and they have some sort of crazy run in the postseason. I don't think he's back. One more thought on college coaches though, like if an LSU, you mentioned Vitello and what Tennessee has to do. Because I think if LSU comes open, LSU can go take their pick of the litter. They can go pick a coach that's been in the World Series 4 or 5 times, and then that's an attractive job. And like I said, there's a domino effect. I'm interested to see what happens with the Arkansas assistant coaches this year because I think with the way, especially the hitters have produced this year and the reputation like a Nate Thompson has garnered, that he could be in the running for some pretty nice jobs at the end of the season. Matt Hobbs too.
Yeah, and it might not be LSU or Texas A&M, might be Tennessee.
Yep.
Tennessee might be filling a coach, and that's a good situation now. And it's a lot better situation since Tony's been recruiting for 5 years or whatever it's been than it was when he went there. And I think they've got a taste of good baseball, and they're going to do something with Lindsey Nelson Field, I think.
Yeah, and I think that was in the plans even before this season. I think that when Tennessee was here 2 years ago, I remember I was sitting up in the press box at Baum the day before the series started, and I recognized a couple of their administrative types, and they were walking around the stadium getting ideas for a renovation that they were looking into at Lindsey Nelson. And I think that their success this year has, really ramped up the
I wonder
the timeline
how many people have come into Baum to take a peek.
Oh, I think a lot. Have you looked at O'Brate Stadium?
Is that Oklahoma State? Yeah, it's.
If you look at that, I don't know if I'd say it's an exact copy, but say from
there's features.
Say from like the third behind the plate, from the third base line or from third base to first base, it looks just like Baum looked when it opened, in terms of the double decker seating, suites on top. It's got a lot of Baum influence, and I think there's a lot of stadiums that are not just college stadiums that have been influenced by Baum. I've heard of minor league teams that have come in and looked at it and gotten ideas for how they want to do things. I've even heard a story that the reason that there are bathrooms in every suite in baseball stadiums now is because Baum did it first. Just something so simple as to put a restroom at the back of your suite like they have, and that other stadiums have tried to do that. I think Founders Park, when they built it in South Carolina, I believe Ray Tanner had been influenced by Baum and wanted to do some of the things. And if you look at Founders Park, it looks a lot like Baum in terms of how they have the chairback seating going from foul pole to foul pole. And so I certainly think it has influenced a lot of parks across the country.
Well, I like it. When you get over 60, that's important, Matt.
Yeah, I guess so. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up. Let's real quick. Kendall Rogers posted the umpires who are going to be at the College World Series, and it looks like
Don't do it to me.
It looks like a greatest hits list of some of Arkansas's biggest umpiring. You got Perry Costello.
No.
Yeah, he's on there. He's the number 2 umpire. I don't know what that means.
No, don't tell me.
You've got Ramon Armendariz.
No.
Well, what game did he?
Oh, he was the guy that Dave Van Torn talked into keeping
the tarp off the field. Yep, the 3 a.m. game.
Yep.
Yeah, Yeah, he's the one that made Keith
says,
Dutton.
put the tarp, and then Dave went crazy, and he came over there.
Yep,
and then he says, okay, let's keep playing, and then Keith Dutton went crazy.
Yeah, and made Keith Dutton pout in his press conference at 4 a.m. I think you read what I wrote earlier. Jeff Heinrichs is on there. Jeff, he was game 2 of the Oregon State series, the pop-up game.
Yeah.
It's not even his fault.
But he was also no. I'm just saying these are guys that have been in some really
bad memories.
Well, I'm saying they've been behind the plate for some really memorable games. Heinrichs also was behind the plate for the 2009 Virginia College World Series game, the Eibner home run.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
So he's the umpire who you can see his head go straight up in the air whenever Brett launches that ball at Rosenblatt. Mike Morris, South Carolina, game 2, 2018 Super Regional. You know, when Bobby Smittle got his TV time for staring down the umpire?
Pointing at him.
That was Morris. You've got Joe Burleson. He was behind the plate for game 3 of the Oregon State Championship Series. And what's kind of funny about that, I wrote a story right before the championship series about Dave's time in Nebraska. And I can only find one picture of Dave Van Horn at Nebraska, and it was him chewing out an umpire. It was Joe Burleson, who's I think this is his 22nd year that he's going to be in an NCAA tournament.
Which one of them gave the heave-ho to the videographer?
That was Joe Burleson.
Okay.
Yeah, game 3 of the Oregon State. He threw Zach Barr out for telling him he was terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a few other names on here you might recognize, but those are kind of the highlights. I told you beforehand that it'd be kind of like if 4 of these guys worked a game at the World Series, it'd be kind of like a basketball staff of
Andre Patillo
and John Clockerty and maybe John Hampton with Ted Valentine as an alternate.
Oh, that'd be the fearsome foursome.
It would be. So those are going to be the umpires in Omaha. And we'll see if Arkansas can make it there. Next week, we'll know more about their road. We'll know who they're going to play in the regional, and we'll know who they're going to be matched up in the super regional. And we'll be back next week. Clay, thanks for coming by.
I enjoyed it, guys. Thanks, Seth.
Thanks, Clay, for hopping on.
All right, for Clay Henry.
Once a year.
Yeah. For Clay Henry and Seth Campbell, I'm Matt Jones. We appreciate you joining us on the WholeHog Baseball Podcast presented by Massage Envy.
The proceeding has been a production of WholeHogSports.com. Look for our latest podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast store. And visit us anytime at WholeHogSports.com for the latest news and commentary.